Welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Alec Cooley. I'm a senior advisor here with Busch Systems, and I will be your moderator for today's program, as I have been for all the programs that we do as part of the Busch Systems Green Thinking webinar series. If you're not familiar with these webinars, we do them roughly every month, every other month, usually 6 or 7 times a year on a range of topics that all come back in some way to waste reduction, recycling, reuse, waste prevention in one form or another. We have a long archive of programs we've done in the past on a whole range of topics. And I'll point out at the very end how you can find recordings and all these archive programs from the past if you're interested to learn more, including several programs that we've done in the past on today's topic, which is K-12 waste reduction in K-12 schools. So I'm excited for today's program. We have an excellent panel that's joining us. We're going to have 3 separate case studies today, and we're going to be touching on, through those case studies, we're going to touch on a range of different types of topics, all specific to K-12 schools, including food waste, education outreach programs, working relationships between school districts and county governments, and reuse and waste prevention in the cafeteria. So I'm excited to hear what our panelists have to speak about. Let me advance here to our next slide. As I said, I'm joined by 3 great speakers, experts in the field with lots of knowledge, working on the ground with their local programs. We're going to hear first from Sammy Springs-LeCain, who is an environmental outreach specialist with Clark County Green Schools in Washington State, just across the border from Oregon. And then we have Aaron Wildeboer, who is a supervisor of waste diversion and outreach programs with Strathcona County Utilities in Alberta, Canada. And then we'll wrap up at the end with Robert Shaheen, who is a director of food and nutrition services with New Bedford Public Schools in Massachusetts. So we will bring them on individually in just a moment. Before we do, I want to just point out again with our Zoom platform how you can interact. We want to make this, to the degree we can, as interactive as possible. We have in your toolbar, you'll notice both the Q&A function and the chat, and I just want to make the distinction. If you have questions that you would specifically like addressed by the speakers that you would like me to read out loud, we're going to hold those for the most part for the end. I may do a few in between presentations, but for the most part, we'll save those for the end. But you'll want to type those questions into the Q&A function specifically, and that's where I'll be looking for them. The chat will be for just banter back and forth. I strongly encourage you to share your own experiences. What are you doing locally in your own area? If there are ideas, thoughts that you want to riff off of that our speakers are talking about, would love to get some interactive dialogue going in the chat function. So encourage folks to use both. Just keep in mind, if you put a question specifically into the chat, I may not see it and it may not get addressed by the speaker. So keep that in mind. Last thing I'll mention is just that today's program is being recorded. We'll have a link to the YouTube video, as well as a copy of the presentation slides, will be posted to our website in the next day or so. We'll send out an email once that is available, so that anybody who registered for this program will look at those links to be able to access those after the fact. Today's program is, we're clocking this at somewhere about 75 minutes. We'll do our best to stick to that. But again, if you're not able to, or you need to leave early, just know that you're going to see a link where you can come back to be able to find the recordings after the fact. And with that, let me step back and hand it over to our first speaker, who will be, again, Sammy Springs-LeCain, who is a senior environmental outreach specialist with Clark County Green Schools in Washington. And I will hand it over to Sammy.
All right. Thanks, Alec. Really appreciate being here and excited to talk a little bit about what we do in Clark County. And I will give it a second so I can advance the slide. All right, so I work for beautiful Clark County in Southwest Washington and lead the Clark County Green Schools program. This is a picture of beautiful Molten Falls, one of my favorite spots to go to in the summer, so I'm excited to go there hopefully pretty soon once it gets a little warmer. So just a brief overview of where we're located. Like Alec mentioned, we're located in Southwest Washington, just across the border from Oregon. Our main city is Vancouver, but we have 6 other cities as well as a town, with a majority of the county pretty rural. But I operate mainly out of Vancouver, but have the joy of, exploring the rest of the county and getting out to some of those more rural areas here. And just a quick overview of our solid waste system. I think it's important for y'all to kind of understand how we operate here in Clark County, before I dive into our program. And so we contract with Waste Connections of Washington as our garbage and recycling hauler. And so we have a pretty cohesive system, where everybody kind of participates in the same way. So our garbage is sent to Finley Butte's landfill in Boardman, Oregon, down the Columbia River by barge. And we send tons of shipping containers of that, unfortunately, to the landfill all the time. But it is a pretty more environmentally sound practice than shipping or driving down the highway to deliver those shipping containers. Our recycling is collected and then sorted and baled at West Van Materials Recovery Facility in Vancouver, Washington. And then we're lucky to have food waste composting as well as yard debris composting, but only residents in City of Vancouver and City of Ridgefield have access to it at home. And then our commercial facilities are able to opt into that program. And so when they collect food waste, it's only food waste, no compostable goods, utensils, bags, etc. Because we work with Dirt Hugger, an all organic compost facility in Dallasport, Washington. So all that is sent over there, and they produce really awesome compost that is then sold back to our county for people to use in their gardens. Sometimes even our schools can use that compost in their school gardens, which is great. So what is Clark County Green Schools? We're a program within Clark County Public Health. We've been around for over 10 years, and our funding comes from waste and recycling fees, as well as grant funding from the State Department of Ecology. And we're able to serve both public and private K-12 schools, which totals about 160 schools in the county. Almost, I think all of our public school districts don't have sustainability coordinators or managers, so we kind of act as that person for them. So we're able to provide not only education and assistance, but also recycling and compost containers at no cost to those schools. So we have, classroom bins, our sort tables, which I'll talk about a little bit soon, and all that stuff at no cost, which is really great. And I love that we're able to do that. And as I mentioned, we contract with Waste Connections of Washington. And as part of our contract, they provide us with an educator who helps us implement some of our waste reduction programming and education. Oh, I think my slide is a little out of order. So before I dive into our sort table, we focus a lot on food waste prevention and diversion. Washington State has a goal of reducing food waste by 75% by 2030. And so we are working really hard to implement strategies to meet this goal. So our kind of shining star is our sort tables, which are made specially for us. And we provide all the training and education on those to implement in school cafeterias. And then we also support schools with food waste prevention, so shared tables, which you all might have in your schools already. But those are really great to prevent uneaten or unwanted food from going into the landfill or into the food waste cart. And just a quick or better look at our sort table. Like I mentioned, these are made just for us. We work with a contractor who designed and created these for us many years ago. And so he still makes them for us and drops them off at the schools. And so students work their way through the line, starting at the liquids, where they drop off their, milk waste, their water, etc. And there's a filter on there so that they don't actually get some garbage or other food waste in there. So it's just liquids that the custodian will then empty at the end of the lunch period. Moving forward, they'll empty their cartons, cans, bottles into the recycling. They have to be empty, clean, and dry. That's why the liquids bucket comes in handy there. And then moving on, they'll empty all the rest of their garbage. So napkins, chip bags, plastic baggies, etc., goes in the garbage. And finally, they'll end up with hopefully just food waste and deposit that directly into the food waste cart. The food waste cart can be swapped out every day. And it's usually lined with a bag, which I'll show you in this next picture. So we have these big green bags that are tied on with reused bike tubes that we get donated. And that way they stay clean and hopefully can get some more use out of those bags before being thrown away. But those cannot be composted. They're just to keep the carts clean. Oop, went too far. Okay, so support in schools. We have a lot of different options to support schools in waste reduction. We're in the classroom a lot, doing lessons on recycling, talking about landfills, greenhouse gases, all that good stuff. A lot of the time we do waste audits, which I'll talk a little bit about later, but I'm actually doing one today too. But that's just, getting really dirty, digging through the garbage, recycling, sorting it out into different categories. We usually do garbage, recycling, food waste, and reusables, and then seeing where we can potentially improve recycling efforts, or we usually do these before we implement a new composting program, so implementing a sort table. We also offer transfer station field trips with Waste Connections. And so my program pays for the buses and substitutes if they need them, and they get to tour West Van materials recovery facility and get to check out where their garbage and recycling goes after it's collected. As I mentioned, a lot of our time is spent assisting schools in composting and recycling. So we're out there checking on programs, following up, delivering materials, that kind of stuff. And that's kind of our main route in getting into schools. And then one of my favorite programs is the worm bin composting project that we have. We provide worm bins at no cost to school as well. And this is a good option for schools if like a sort table system doesn't work, but they still want to do some composting. So they can compost food scraps with their worm bin and then potentially use that in their school garden. And finally, we do some green team support. So green teams could be after school clubs, leadership teams, any green team. We even have a whole school that's a green team. So we just try to come to meetings, help them get started on some projects. And that is LaCenter High School receiving the Green Ribbon Award from the Department of Ed for all of their green team efforts, which is really, really cool. So speaking of LaCenter, in the 2022-2023 school year, we launched district-wide composting, which was no small undertaking. They only have 3 schools and they're very rural district, but it was a lot of time and effort and collaboration to get this going. So we were first contacted by the student green team at LaCenter, who had just won the green team, the Green Ribbon Award. So they were, they wanted something else to do. Why not add a composting program? So it was really student driven. They met with us, they met with the admin and the staff, and we talked through how this would work at each of the schools. And so from there, we conducted a preliminary waste audit at each of the schools in fall of that year. And once we had that data and talked about a schedule, we launched it in October of 2022. And we were there for a whole week, sort table monitoring. You can see in this photo, one of the students picking through the recycling to pull out contaminants. But from there, we kind of left them to do it because once we leave, we're hoping that the students and the staff will take it on from us. So they did a really great job with monitoring. And then at the end of the school year, we did a final waste audit. But of course, there's always concerns and things to work through before we implement something big like this. So a few concerns, especially for custodial staff, because it's waste. They're going to be the ones in charge of it. So they were worried about extra work for them. Before, a lot of schools just had garbage and recycling in the cafeteria, not very centralized. But we kind of tried to ease their concerns about just talking through it, emphasizing that it's not more work, it's just different work. And hopefully it will actually be easier because they're not hauling really heavy bags of garbage anymore. They're also worried about contamination and critters and pests, which I have a picture of a raccoon in here because they have dealt with raccoons out in their area because they are more rural, as well as student pushback. So we worked through those. We talked with the students to talk to other students and build and maintain relationships with them. And they had a really cool student mentoring program where they had high school students team up with fourth graders at the elementary school and do some mentoring, and that really helped ease concerns there, and really also, hopefully took some of the work off of the custodians. In regards to critters and pests, we haven't had any issues with any other schools, and so we just kind of talked through that. And if worse comes to worse, and there's raccoons getting in the carts or something, we can potentially put a lock on them or something like that. But we haven't had to do that, luckily. And finally, like I mentioned, it was a lot of work. So taking that time, coordinating with staff and student, and just making sure no one's getting burnt out. But we were really lucky to have a lot of student support in that sense, and they did a huge portion of all this work. So I'm excited to share some waste audit results. As I said earlier, we separate our waste into different categories. We usually do recycling, food waste, garbage, and reusables. I will note that reusables does include some food rescue, so that would be uneaten food that could be potentially put on the share table. That's how it works in my brain. I think we need to, fix that because it is a little confusing. But here are results from the middle school. We did do audits at the elementary school, but unfortunately had incomplete data because the food waste cart was picked up before we got there. So not great, but we still had great results from middle school and high school. And so you can see that the food waste was very high in the garbage, almost 35 pounds of food waste compared to 20 pounds of garbage. So once we implemented the sort table, we saw that drop drastically. And I will note that, this is just a snapshot in time. So they might have eaten different things this day. They might have had different amount of kids show up to school that day. So you can kind of see that it was like a lot of garbage that first preliminary waste audit, and not as much the second time around. But all in all, we did see huge improvements with recycling being really clean. They didn't even have recycling before, so we were able to get that going with the sort table. And then really clean results with the new food waste cart. So almost all of it was food waste, and Dirt Hugger is always really happy to receive our stuff because it comes to them very clean. Similar results with LaCenter High School. They also had a lot of garbage, food waste in the garbage, and luckily minimal recycling, which is great. And so we saw a drastic drop off with that. We saw a lot of recycling originally, or a lot of garbage originally in the recycling, and then we're able to minimize that once we had the sort table in action. And then also saw similar results for the food waste, which with it being very clean, and majority of that reusables is food rescue. So no garbage, which is amazing. And this is after like 6 or 7 months of these sort tables being in use. So we weren't even there that whole time, and the kids were just really staying on top of it. So some lessons learned that I'd like to share with you all after our project with LaCenter School District and just our day-to-day work is finding your champions in the school. We were really lucky to have a pre-existing relationship with LaCenter High School, and Rebecca in this picture on the right, she is the teacher behind it all, and she just really guides those kids to do their best and do their projects on their own with a little help from her, but it's really all them. So we're really happy to have someone like that. And what I would say, if you have trouble finding someone, is just to do some school visits, send some emails, host some workshops, just try to find some opportunities to get in there, and then, continually build off that initial relationship meeting and get that going. Communication is always key. We did a lot of different communication tactics, emails, texts. I would drop into green team meetings, all that good stuff. And it was really great to have a really strong communication relationship with all of the schools, and even the principals and the vice principals ended up participating in some of the waste audits. So I think that helped with getting them involved too. Gathering feedback, both positive and negative. We did hear from high schoolers, mainly football players, unfortunately, who just didn't really see the point of composting or using the sort table. So we talked with the green team and with Rebecca, and they were able to talk to their coach and some of the players one-on-one. And that was really effective in getting them to see why it's important to use the sort table, and just, getting it across that it's just different and you'll just have to get used to it. Continuing to foster relationships at every level. We have a really strong connection with this green team photographed here. And I know all their names, I know their teachers, I know the principals, and I'm so happy to know all these kids and continue to see them every year. Unfortunately, some of them have graduated, but it's really important to show up and be there for them. And then finally, showing off your accomplishments. After all of our work in the 2022-2023 school year, we were able to award La Center High School with our Clark County Green Award for Green Team of the Year. And they're holding that awesome trophy in the middle there. And with that, we were able to write an article in the local paper, had an award ceremony at the school board meeting. And so it was really great to show it off and share all of their amazing accomplishments that they completed that year. And with that, I think that's it. Thank you for your time, and I'll pass it back over to Alec.
Great, thank you, Tammy. That was fantastic. Tyler, I just want to point out real quick, I'm getting a thing on your thing, the video is not working. So if you can just look into that and tell me if that's the case or not, that'd be great. Thank you, Sammy. So let's real quick do a poll question. So for everybody who's on, and this is obviously addressed to those of you who are specifically working with a school, either with a district, with an individual school, or even if you are working with a local government or a hauler that has a direct relationship, support relationship for schools, feel free to consider this applying to you as well. But the question where it comes to food waste and getting a sense of who, how widespread are different programs to address food waste specifically. So you can see the options here. Check any of these that apply. And so we'll give folks a minute to fill those out. And while we're waiting for that to happen, I've got a couple of questions that have come in for you, Sammy. I think you kind of addressed this, but Rick had a question. Budget numbers for Clark County recycling and the funding from the general fees are from the trash pickup. Is there a little more detail you can share about how that's set up and how that functions?
Sure. Yeah. Honestly, it's not my sphere. We have an operations team that deals with the fees and contracts and stuff. But I believe it's our recycling and hauling fees from residents, and it also might be tip fees at the transfer station that helps with our funding. But we are separate funding from public health as well as the general fund for the county. So we kind of operate as just one unit.
Got it. Okay. Another question that's come in. This one was from Michelle. But do the schools that you serve, is this on an opt-in basis, or is this automatic, or how does the relationship work with individual schools and bringing them into the fold?
Yeah, good question. It is an opt-in program, and schools do pay for the service, especially all the materials that we provide are free, but they do have to pay for the carts and service for the food waste. And so we have schools opt into it. We kind of do a case-by-case basis when we get requests, and we have about 60 of our schools participating in sort tables. Like I mentioned, it does take a lot of our staff time, but I think it's one of the most important things that a school can do. And so we usually do have more elementary and middle schools opt into the program since they have smaller class sizes and more centralized cafeterias. So yes.
Right. I mean, is there a long-term goal to make this
Oh,
mandatory
yes.
or just
Yeah,
through
I would love,
persuasion?
yes, I would love that. Yeah, I'm hoping, I love the bottom or the, yeah, bottom up approach with the students like really being leaders. That's awesome. But I also try to get in at the district level and talk to nutrition services and facilities to kind of get up at the top and then bring it down to the schools. So we kind of do a couple different things to get it implemented, but I would love to see it widespread in all of our schools. It would just take a lot of time.
Yep, fair enough. Good. We do have other questions in here, but I want to hold on to these for the end, and obviously encourage folks to continue to submit questions for Sammy. But let's go ahead and just read off the polls here. I think I think everybody can see this on the screens, but it looks like about 64% of those who responded have a food composting program in some form. With the schools they work with, it looks like 28% or so have programs in place to donate unserved food to local shelters, which is fantastic. I'd love to see that number get higher over time, but I feel like that's even an improvement over a few years ago. Source reduction, backup house, 26%, and then 46% of school folks had either share tables or some other type of direct student engagement efforts around food waste. It looks like other number of folks there. So again, as I say here, encourage folks to, if you have specific examples, things you want to brag about yourself or things you think are noteworthy, share it in the chat. We'd love to have those for folks to look at. And we will, as with the recording and the resources that my colleague Tyler is tossing into the chat, we will also take sort of a cleaned up sort of version of the chat with, we'll anonymize the responses, but we'll put a version of that also online. So if there are examples that you're sharing that you think are noteworthy, we'll also have those available for folks to come back and scroll through after the program. With that, why don't we go ahead and move on to our next presenter? And that will be Erin Wildeboer, who is a supervisor of waste diversion and outreach programs with Strathcona County Utilities in Alberta. So Erin, welcome from across the border, and tell us what you're doing in Strathcona County.
Hey Alec, thanks for having me. This is a great panel. Sammy and I have a lot of things in common, and I'm sure we could talk for hours. So I will get started. And let's just see here. So again, to give you a bit of background on who I am and where we are. So we're just outside of Edmonton, Alberta. Our population of Strathcona County is about 100,000 people. We're about 70-80% urban and about 30% rural. So we do have a big rural chunk. That does include our schools as well. We have two major school divisions in our county, and I'll tell you a little bit more about those as well. We also have a gifted school and a francophone school, like a French school as well. So I'm going to go over how we do things, like how the municipality works with the school boards. I work specifically with our city, so I work for Strathcona County, and our school boards are separate. We'll also talk to you a little bit about how to get into your schools and actually do the work we want to do, and then what to do when you're in there, because we've got lots of fun things. I'm hoping you can take a few things out and maybe try them on your own, see how it goes, and let me know. In Strathcona County, I'm super fortunate. It's a big enough municipality where we get to make some change and see some things happen. But I work with a really great team and a very forward-thinking leadership group, including our mayor and council. And we have a different philosophy in that we want our residents to be part of the solution. So that we want them to be responsible, and that includes right when they are little to right when they grow up. So when they go from home, they go to school, they go to the rec facilities, they go to their library, it doesn't matter. All of the waste diverting options and opportunities are there for them, so it just becomes second nature. This is also put into our 10-year roadmap that we got approved through council, and educating the youth in our community was brought up in our public engagement as well. So it's important to our residents, so it makes it easy for us to go in and do all these kind of things with them. Our team is pretty small. It's myself and I have an assistant that works with me part-time. And so we do all of the work within our schools, plus a bunch of other fun things. how our school boards work is we have Elk Island Public and Elk Island Catholic. Those are two major school boards. All of their funding comes from the province. We have funding from, my position is funded through taxpayers and through ratepayers for our recycling and organics collection program. So they don't go together at all, the two of them. None of the school boards have any dedicated positions to environmental learning or any sort of waste diversion, things like that. They have a facility contractor that talks about things with the janitorials and with the actual contract for waste collection. So we actually go together as a tender, all three of us, when we go out for procurement for our waste collection services. So that actually gives us a little bit more bang for our buck, and we can get a better pricing for it. The Elk Island Catholic School Board, we started doing this 8 years ago, and they jumped on board and did a full program for organics as well as recycling for all of their schools. Whereas the public side, we're still working on funding for them to be able to pay for the organics program. So just a little bit of a breakdown what we do at home versus what we do in the schools. So all of the residential houses, all of the public spaces provided by the county, and the Catholic schools can divert organics. Public schools can't just yet. Everybody everywhere can recycle paper products, and in your home and in back of house for county buildings, public schools and Catholic schools, you can also recycle plastics, metals, things like that. But we don't do plastics and metals in public eye because people won't have enough. And actually what is actually considered recyclable in our community, they wouldn't have at these local places. So breakdown of our schools, public school has about 39 schools in total. Their district is bigger than our community. So we actually have only 22 of their schools within our district, which makes it a little confusing when you're trying to do public education for, say, Elk Island Public Schools, because only 22 of the 39 schools can actually participate. It's because we only have tax money for the ones that are in our own bracket. So it makes it a little confusing, but it works out in the end. So we have 14 elementary schools, and we've presented to 17 different schools in the Elk Island Public School Division. And we have our fingers in all of those schools. Catholic schools have 9 in our district, 6 of them are elementary, and we've presented to 7 of those. So how do you actually get in there? I think the biggest one is on our end is to learn your curriculum. So teachers want to know things or have presentations based on what they have to teach the kids. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see what is actually part of the Alberta curriculum and what teachers are being told that the students have to learn. So it is specifically about waste and recycling and what happens locally. So we hit that specifically. So this is grade 4 education in science. There is other parts of the curriculum for junior high and high school, but it is a little bit more, you have to get a little more creative. It's not as obvious as Waste in Our World, which is a grade 4 curriculum subject that every single grade 4 student uses. So we love that the grade 4s are always included, and we don't have to worry about branching out at all. So the first thing I learned at a workshop I did years and years ago is that we were all trying to brainstorm how to get into the schools, and somebody said they sent a fax to the grade 4 teacher. And we thought that was a little funny, but it worked great because they actually got the information. When we were sending information through the school board or the principals, they just delete the emails or the information because they don't have time to look at it, or they didn't know what it was about. So it sat on the end of the desk. So now we actually give a little gift to all of the teachers in grade 4 at the beginning of the school year, and it has a handout with, like this one does, that has all of the information on the programs we offer, the things we can come and do. And so this one had a free Slurpee coupon with it and a reusable Slurpee straw, which went over really well. And that it took about 2 years of doing this type of an effort, and now we're in every single grade 4 school, or every single grade 4 classroom in our community. So that worked out really well. Strathcona County also offers a newsletter that goes out to all of the schools. So it goes actually through our Recreation, Parks and Culture department. So we just put information into that newsletter that they send out every month. So we don't have to do the newsletter, we just jump in on their efforts there. If your school division has their own newsletter, you can see if you can jump in on that. The other thing is just be good at it. Have fun with the kids. The teachers will have you back every single year if what you did and what you came in to do is really fun and the kids learned a lot. And the teachers didn't have to do much. They tend to love that. So they ask us back every year. We have, by September of the next year, we'll have already almost filled up for that school year. So some more tricks, don't reinvent the wheel. Eco Schools Canada is an amazing program that has a ton of resources. They have a ton of tasks that you have to do to get certified. There's, I think, 48 or 50 different tasks you can do. There's tons of resources that come along with it, so it's super easy. And so we're essentially trying to get every school to be an Eco School Canada school, and celebrate them at the end of the year as to if they've got certified or how they got certified, things like that. So Alberta also has the Alberta Council for Environmental Education. They're really good at making sure environmental education stays in our curriculum. The North American Association for Environmental Educators is also a great one you can try out. They have a really great conference too. If you get a chance to go to that, I highly recommend it. And then Egg for Life is another one that kind of tells the story about how we can get food from the farms to the schools, to your plate. And it takes the food approach to waste reduction versus the recycling approach. Okay, so here's some ideas on what to do and what we do when we get into the schools. Like I said, we do presentations for every single grade 4 class. It's it's a PowerPoint presentation, but we bring a lot of stuff with us that we hand out to the kids. So that includes like a piece of condensed styrofoam. It includes part of the liner that you put on the landfill at the bottom. We have tons of photos and videos. Recently, we had a garbage truck light on fire, or a recycling truck light on fire in our community, and had to dump it all over the neighborhood. So that was an excellent video we got to put in, and the kids love seeing that one. It's a very easy way to teach about household hazardous waste and what not to do with it. So bring props. We also give every student a reusable sandwich bag at the end. And so we talk about, if you had something like this, would you use it? And of course, they're all saying yes. So they get to see that. And then we also get to see in years later, who's still bringing that reusable sandwich bag to school. So we get to see that it's actually working and creating some behavior change. The other thing we do about this is keeping it really local. So we have lots of local stories about like what actually happens to our waste. Our organics program is very full circle, going right back to a farm not far from us, and then it comes back here so people can use it for compost. So it's great if you can find those little stories and pull them out and expand on those ones as well. Let them be leaders. They love to boss their parents around. So we have a handout that we make them take home and color and put on a box and tell them to take it to dinner. And they have to tell their parents what goes in this box. So this is all the things that we want them to bring to our household hazardous waste station or to our independent recycling stations. So stuff you can't put at curbside, but you can still recycle. So they have to go home, tell their parents about it, and then come back to school and tell their teacher how their presentation at dinner went. And so that's a fun way for them to boss around their parents a little bit. We do waste audits with the kids. These can even be done in a 1-hour presentation if you keep the talking short and you get the kids down. We bring a little kit with all the stuff to do it. Kids love gross things, so they get really involved. And when you're hands-on learning, it makes it so much more effective. We also use math, so we do the fractions on waste to overall actual waste that should have been going to the landfill, or organics that should have been going to the landfill. So making them do math, they don't love, but they will do, and the teachers love that it's cross-curricular. In our Catholic schools, at the beginning of every year, on most of the schools, we go in and either the teachers either have an environmental club or a leadership class, or even just a grade 4 class, and we train them all to be green routine gurus, and they do a little 4-question test at the end, and then they get these lanyards and a certificate, and they're like the king and queens of the school. They get to go around from class to class and tell all their peers how to recycle and do the organics program in school. Again, kids love to be bossy, so let them do that with all their peers. We also, when we weren't able to do class to class back during COVID, I came in and we were able to take the leadership kids, and I'll show you the video right away, but we just took some photos and did some videos with them, and I used InShot just on my phone. And I have no IT experience whatsoever, so if I can do this, I'm sure you can as well. But this is the video that we put together, and then they'll show this video on the screen in all of their classrooms at the beginning of the school year to remind everybody. I may or may not play the whole thing, but hopefully you can turn it up.
We're here to help you sort your waste here at school. You can put anything that was once living, or you can put it in the green bin.
So you get the idea. But anyway, the kids love it. They're movie stars. It's super fun to do with them. The other thing we have are some kits. So we have book bins. So we have 3 different book bins. We'll drop them off at the school. They all have different books on environmental education, things like this. We have an early readers book bin as well for the younger grade levels. So we drop that off. We have a green routine game. So it has about 48 different fake pieces of food and all the different things. And there's little ribbons that they have to put the different things in there, and they kind of race each other to see who can sort the items in the bin fast enough. We also have a beeswax wrap kit. So we talk to kids about reducing their plastic waste when they're bringing their food to school. And so we talk about beeswax wraps. These things are awesome. They're super cheap. I said $2 to $3 here, but I did the math again, and I think it's like less than $2 to make one. We get the beeswax off Amazon. I've made this YouTube video on how to make it. It's about a 2-minute video. It's pretty simple. And, oh, sorry, we'll go back here. Hang on, too many things showing up here. But we do have a kit. So the kit includes a bunch of towels, some irons that we picked up at the thrift store, the wax to make it, and the fabric to make it. We usually have our summer students cut everything up and get the kits ready. So there's lots so we can refill them quite easily. And they're a huge hit, and the kids love doing it. And then they'll use that in their lunch kit because they've made it too. So it's something that they're proud of and they want to use. We do tours of our Enviro Service Station and our Hodgepodge Lodge. The Hodgepodge Lodge is a community reuse building where everything is free to drop off and free to take. So the kids love coming there and doing some upcycled crafts, as well as learning all about the household hazardous waste, the Enviro Service Station. The problem for us right now is that busing we can't fund the busing because we don't have enough money, and the school board doesn't have enough money to pay for the busing, so the teachers have to allocate that money or fundraise for it somehow. So we're trying to get some sponsorships and some other grants to help with that busing fee, but that would be one of the barriers that we have to this program. We also help them with different events, so like Earth Day, Waste Reduction Week, any other environmental week type events that they want to do. We host a shoe drive every year with help with sponsorship from GFL. And we do a whole bunch of different events. We also will just go in if a teacher just says, hey, we want to do something environmental, can you come help us with something? We'll jump to the phone for that. We'll come help them do whatever they want. If you haven't heard of Kahoot, you should Google it. It's really fun. It's just a little online game system that the kids use, and most of the teachers in our area know what a Kahoot is, and they do it quite frequently with the kids, so they know how to use it, but your teachers may have something else that's similar to it. I didn't even know about this until I had kids and they told me about it, so it's a fun thing to try out. Second here. And just most importantly, help where you can. I mean, these carts we have plenty of because we use them for a residential program, and we can kind of be able to purchase them and hide them in fees in different budgets that we have, so we can get around it a little bit. But you know, we can help with signage, we can help with graphic design, we can help with connecting them to other municipalities. For example, if they want to grow a garden, they can. That's one of the Eco Schools tasks. We can help them with another department in the community that does community gardens. We help research grants for them. If they want to do a pancake breakfast, we'll bring green carts to the school if they don't already have them, and we'll take them back so that they can at least divert waste for a specific event. And just build those relationships. Think outside the box. Ask the teachers what they need, you know, what they think is fun. And again, find the spot in the curriculum where you can tie it to there, because they're always looking for ways to make their teaching fun, but it has to be driven specifically to their curriculum. They're very curriculum driven here in Alberta. So with that, I encourage, if you have any questions or have any ideas, please let me know. I'm happy to brainstorm some things, bounce ideas off you. I'd love to hear what you guys are doing too. So yeah, anytime.
Great. Thanks, Erin. More great information there. What you're doing up there in Strathcona County. So we have a few more questions. Some of these that have been coming in are I'm actually going to hold because I think there'll be great questions to come back to when we have all the panelists for more of a general discussion. So before we move on, we don't have another live poll question, but again, want to just prompt folks to share in the chat. Are there examples of successful or original student engagement outreach initiatives that you've done locally? You saw some examples of what Aaron and Sammy have both done, but and some of these are, many of these programs are pretty universal. A lot of districts, schools do them, but if you have anything sort of unique, something you come up with locally that you thought is creative, encourage you to share those into the chat. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we'll make this available after the fact, after the program, for folks to come back to as well. So with that, I'm going to hold additional questions for the moment and bring up Robert, and then we'll come back and do all of our questions at one time at the very end. So with that, let me introduce Robert Shaheen, who was a director of food and nutrition services with the New Bedford Public Schools in Massachusetts. And Robert's going to talk about what they've been doing with the cafeteria waste and reuse system. So Robert, go ahead and take it from here.
Thanks, Alec. So I'm from New Bedford, Massachusetts. That's where our school district is located, about 40 miles south of Boston. And so we're on the East Coast, obviously, and my accent might come out a little bit. So I'll start by saying that I'm wicked excited to be part of this panel and with wicked awesome panelists. So just in case, I have that still Boston accent, and try not to use it as much. But yeah, so New Bedford Public Schools. So I've been in food service K-12 for about 9 years. The district before this I was in had about 2,400 students, 4 sites. New Bedford currently has just over 15,000 students, 32 sites, 24 of them which are the public schools, and the rest of them, we do a few charter schools and some parochial schools. So we incorporate as many different sites that we can in this district. Before that, I spent 20 years in the restaurant business. So I worked at places like Uno Chicago Grill, Panera Bread, Friendlies. So I've got a lot of experience in restaurants, but not so much in the K-12 field, which I picked up, over the years. So let's see, let's get going here for the next slide. Okay, so when I got here in 2018, I was the assistant director for 1 year, and then the director who was here retired. And at that time in 2018, there was an initiative going on in the district at 3 different sites that was trying to get the dish machines up and running. So there were 10 schools that had the ability to have dish machines. Some were working. I think 3 of the 4 of the sites had working dish machines. The other 7 did not. So there was a grant, and folks that I teamed up with who had started an initiative to replace 10 dish machines at 3 sites. So 3 of the sites had 2 of the sites had 3 serving areas, and 1 site had 4. So there was 10 dish machines total. So I was able to meet with folks from the, let's see here, from the refuge district. Just trying to catch up on my here. The Regional Refuge Management District, and their names were Marissa and Meg, and they were excellent. And they were able to get funding through the state with the recycling program that offers funding and grants to communities that do green initiatives. And so we started that project to make sure that we had to replace the dish machines and get new trays. And what happened was in 2019, we were just about to have that all happen, and then COVID happened. So we were stuck for 2 years before we started the project back up. And during that time, the district was pretty much using styrofoam here throughout the district. Even though some of the sites had dish machines, they weren't using them for all the lunches. So the last lunch was, they didn't want to have to work hard, and they felt they didn't have time, so they would use styrofoam, even though they had a dish machine, and try to do that. So the cost for that year, 22-23, we were using over 1.5 million styrofoam trays, about $85,000 a year cost for that. Costs skyrocketed, during COVID. And then when we got the dish machines in place, we started to look at recyclable trays. So in the first year, 22-23, we didn't use any. So talking with Marissa and Meg at the refuge department, we looked at some different recyclables. So now you've got to take those trays, and if they're, even though they might be called compostable or recyclable, it depends on how they're made. So, we did a lot of studying on figuring out what truly is what it says it is. And so in 23-24, I made the investment to go away from styrofoam and use just the recyclable ones for sites that did not have dish machines. And so in the district, there's 32 sites. Like I said, about 10 of them had the opportunity of dish machines. I was going to repair those that weren't working. And then the other sites will never, ever have a dish machine put in there because these schools are like over 100 years old. Back in the day, kids would go home for lunch. I happen to be one of them in the early 70s. And then when they decided to keep kids in school for the whole day, they went to the basement of most of these buildings and said, okay, this looks like where an oven's going to be. Okay, maybe we can put a sink over here and a freezer. But they really didn't have the plumbing and electrical to do, the right setup for a cafeteria. So those sites were always going to be using some sort of throwaway tray, which is a challenge. So I did go with the reusable at the schools that had dish machines. I think we're up to just 2 sites now out of the 10 that don't. The dish machines aren't completely fixed yet, so we got to work on that. But there was a lot of trays in the district already, the reusable ones. So I purchased about 9,000 more trays in 22-23, and the cost is about $31,000. But that's a one-time cost. You don't have to buy any more really again. Except when we got more dish machines up, I bought another 2,500, and so the cost is about $3.70 each. So the total cost was about $40,000. But like I said, once you make that initial cost, you might be replacing a few trays over the years, or if you get more dish machines, then you buy more trays. But you're moving definitely away from styrofoam, which was my goal in the district, was not to use those, and then use recyclable. So that was really the onus of what we're trying to do in the district. So let's see. Okay, so that's kind of the cost here. So let's go on to the next slide. Let's see here. I think I went too far. Where did the thing go? Go backwards. All right, sorry. Having technical difficulties. So in some of the schools, of course, staffing has been an issue throughout the country in food service. And I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we were paying them enough. The hours were comparable to the number of meals we were serving. So again, this talks about the sites that had dish machines. And so when you go into a school and you say, hey, we're going to start, washing trays, the first thing they say is we don't have time. So I had to be resourceful and look around to see what we were doing. One of the things I did is we were making sun butter or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches by the hundreds every day for about an hour and a half at every school. So easily what I did was just do the Uncrustables, which are already made, prepackaged, and just take them out of the freezer. In 24 hours, you're all set. So I saved them about an hour at a time. So there was really not a lot of excuses about time, although they still complained a little bit. And sites that were understaffed, I had to staff those to bring them up to par so they could at least serve meals. And over time, I was able to get more people to work. And so I started out with kind of the 4-hour shift. And that was kind of the cost. We pay a minimum of about $17 an hour for a cafeteria worker. So I kind of averaged it out in the cafeteria as to what someone would make, times 180 days. If I had to have one at each of those sites, it'd be a cost of about $63,000 for 5 people each year. So, and then you can do other things in the cafeteria to offset that. Can you increase your participation? Do you have a breakfast program? Breakfast is a great way to make a lot of extra money because most of the staff is there, and you get a pretty good bang for the buck in terms of the meal. But the sites that did not have dish machines, or kind of never will at this point, I'm still going to have to buy the reusable tray, the trays that you throw away. So the recyclable ones. So and that cost was about 1,600 meals per day, based on 180 days. So I figured that's probably close to $95,000 a year I'm still going to spend on that. So these numbers are, based on what happens in my district. It could be less, it could be more in your district, depending on how you're doing that. So here are some of the tray comparisons that I did. So if you're using a compostable tray, obviously it's going to be landfill friendly. You're not going to fill it up as much, and it should compost. you know, it's a better alternative to using the styrofoam trays, which just are bad for the environment and they take up a lot of space. Now, the routine is similar for students and staff with those because they're still taking the tray and they're throwing it away. So there's really nothing that changes. Now, when you use a reusable tray, you're not throwing it away, so it's not going in the landfill, for one thing. And there's a one-time cost. You know, if you buy them for the school, how many you need to recycle through, you know, you're going to just pay that once. Staffing, like I said before, you might have to add a staff. Maybe start out with someone working 4 hours, or you find time for them to do it. You know, like you reduce some other things that I might be doing, and then you can utilize that time for that. The training for the students and the staff is, yes, the staff has to use the dish machines. So there's some training on that, you know, time management in terms of in between lunches, you know, they got to wash the tables and they got to prepare for the next meal. And then they have to try to do trays. You need to have enough in there so that they're not relying on just washing the trays, because obviously they're not going to dry enough. And then the student impact, like how are they bringing stuff back to the dish room or, you know, the drop-off area, like Sam and Aaron had showed. You know, those are great examples of trying to get the students involved with that sort of thing. So that's what I do for that part. So composting. So we started a composting initiative in the district a few years ago, and it was a pilot program. So we have 32 sites. I didn't want to go all out and do every site. It just wasn't going to be manageable. Plus, I was doing it on my own, just in the kitchen. So I didn't start it out in the cafeteria yet. So I picked the biggest site, which is the high school. Plus, we had a tonnage restriction that came through the state a few years ago, where if a site produces more than a ton a month, you know, you had to find some alternative way of getting rid of the waste without sending it to the landfill. So I kind of got ahead of that curve. This came out about a year or so ago, and I started the composting just before that. So that worked out well. And I did it at the high school, just in the cafeteria. And then I expanded it to an elementary school to try it out because they were kind of people that were really ahead of the curve too, and trying to do more composting and recycling and so forth. So that was a test. And then this past year, I expanded it to the 3 middle schools. Plus, they have an area and a place to, you know, to store the bins. So you can see a picture of bins here. And what happens is they bring the bin inside, they put the waste in there, and then they, at the end of the day, or right after they're done, they wheel it back outside to the area where it'd be picked up. Now, if you store it inside, yes, you might find some fruit flies and maybe there's an odor, but you know, it's pretty quick, and the containers are sealed. So there shouldn't be much happening, anything different than if you're putting trash in a trash barrel. And so, yeah, we did have some pushback from the custodians, but at the end of the day, I think like Sam had pointed out, it's still trash that they have to throw away. It's just kind of separated. So really, where's the argument? So we kind of won that over. And then they're on wheels, so they're easily to move around. And a company comes and picks them up. And they're called Black Earth. And there is a little cost for that, as I show here. We have a weekly pickup. We only do it in the kitchen starting out, just as a pilot. This is our second year. And the cost per site with 3 or 4 bins is about $300, you know, per month. So it's about $2,700 per year or so to do the pickup for the compost. So I'll just talk a little bit more about the composting there, because I know, like, I think Sam and Aaron have great programs with the student involvement. I haven't got to that point yet, so I'm kind of going the opposite direction that they did. They started, I think, with the students and built the program out. I just dove right in and did it, you know, from the administration side. I had support from administration. You know, I was able to win over the staff a little bit because there wasn't really much change for them. They were just putting in a separate bin instead of all the trash. They were just taking the waste and putting it in there. So I have met with some students at the high school. So I'm starting it at the high school first, with trying to get the students involved with the initiatives to take on recycling and composting in the dining area. We met with students the other day, and you know, it's a challenge, right? The students are busy, and it's been a challenge to try to get them involved, but we're going to do it, and it just starts with one. So once you get one going, you know, they'll get more folks on. So we have more meetings scheduled, and we're going to talk more about, you know, how do we recycle? You know, at the high school cafeteria, there are 4 serving areas, 3,000 students. And when I redid that cafeteria over a few years ago, I set it up like a college, cafe type of thing where they would come in and be able to pick different areas, and then I had a tray drop off. Well, I didn't realize that, when you're in college, that lunch period might be from 11 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, and students come and go. Well, at the high school, 400 kids sit down at the same time and get up at the same time. So I had some problems with the tray drop off that was backed up, for quite a bit. So now we had to set up different areas for trays to be dropped off, and try to do that in terms of sorting things out a little bit and look at the different items that we're using. We try not to use straws. We're trying to find an alternative to the sport kit, if we can find something that's recyclable or compostable, so it's easy to sort. So we're still working on that sort of thing. So we also started this past month, and I spelled milk wrong. So it says bulk milk dispensers. And we did it in one cafeteria at the high school. And when I first set it up, I wheeled the thing in there, and I had someone help me, and there was like 6 staff members, food service staff members in there. And they were, going at me. Oh, it's going to be a mess. Oh, it's, who's going to lift the thing up? And oh, the kids are going to steal the milk, for like 5 minutes. And I looked at him like, can you just leave me alone? I'll let you know all these things, and we'll address those as we get going. So I got it set up, and I put it over to the side, and it was working out pretty well, but the students were kind of bottlenecking up in there, and it wasn't really in the line of where they go to check out. So to my amazement, I came back a few days, and they had moved the machine themselves over to an area where it was more accessible and the flow was better. I also started, there's 3 spigots here for service. So I had like chocolate in one, I had 1% milk in the middle, and then I had skim in the end. So I came back 2 days later and opened up the fridge, and all the chocolate was gone, and the white and the skim weren't touched. So I said, okay, I'll put chocolate in one, chocolate in 2, and white in the other one. I came back a few days later, chocolate's gone, white's full. So on that time I said, we're just going to go all chocolate. So we did that, and it's working out much better. So we still have the cartons available. So if the students don't want to do the self-service themselves, they can choose the carton, which is great. So I don't think I'll ever get away from the carton, because obviously, like I said, I don't have the white and the skim on the machine, and I probably have to add more machines, because I have 2 service exit ways that come out when they get their food, and there's just one right now, so I'm probably have to get another one for the other side, so it's just a little bit easier. So let's see here. So how do we do all this stuff with funding, right? So if you run a really good program in your school, and we're lucky in this state because it's universal free, the students don't they're not charged for the first breakfast or lunch. So programs in this state are making a lot of extra money. So the kids don't have to worry about paying for the meals. So that's offering some opportunities to spend money. Now, if they have, pretty decent schools with equipment, they don't have to focus on that. They can spend it on some of these other things. That's what I've done. So I got a grant for the bulk milk machine too. So I'll have to probably buy the other ones unless I can find another grant. For the composting, for the recycling and the reusable trays, like I said, I worked with Marissa and Meg at the refuse department, but there are other departments in the state, the agriculture department. The community recycling initiative has a department that they send funds to each community to fund these sort of efforts. So I'm reaching out to them. So I just believe that no matter where you are, those changes are coming, and you're best to try to get ahead of it. And even if you start small, you're at least starting. And I haven't had too many pushback. If I have, I really find the solutions. I'm not the type of person who thinks about when someone references, oh, nobody wants to do it and everybody hates it. Well, you didn't talk to everybody. So, and those generalization things don't work well with me. I like to have details. I like to know what the issue is and then try to work to solve it. So that's really my presentation. Like I said, I just talked about, there was a written case study done in New Bedford a few years ago about the recycling program. So that was great. It's good to be recognized. It's great to be maybe a mentor. I talk with a lot of other districts and folks around us. How do you do it? How do you get started? I was put up as Father Ocean in New Bedford. So that's for our recycling efforts, but it's not just me. It's the team that I have. There's 160 food service staff workers in the district. I have 3 assistant directors. They're all awesome people, and I couldn't do it alone. So they help with a lot of these initiatives. And we're just working now on trying to get the students more involved. Like I said, there's the Mass DEP Green Team efforts that they have funding and stuff that you can do. And there's, you just have to look for stuff out there and just keep asking questions and networking. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Great. Tyler, if you can undo my video, that would be great. Thanks, Rob. That was fantastic. You're doing some great stuff there. I'll share my personal story with this. I can remember when I was, I think, in 5th grade, my school had the reusable dish trays, as many schools did back. If you go back previous decades, before a lot of these washrooms got taken out, and there was that conversion over to disposables. But I remember that as a student, 5th grader, you could get free meals if you signed up for, volunteered for a washing session. And so I don't know if that's if labor laws still allow that, or facility rules do, but that was one way of getting around the labor, at least back in the 70s. If everyone wants to turn on their cameras now, we have some questions we'll throw out for everybody. And I will start out with one for you, Rob. I wanted to clarify one thing about the economic case that you were explaining earlier. You had I made note that, so you showed 10 schools that had the reusable tray system in place and 22 that did not yet, and you had the cost broken out, and I think it was roughly 60,000 was your cost ballpark for those 10 schools with the reuse. Or I'm probably getting that wrong, but on the surface of it, it looked as though your costs were lower for the schools that were using the reusable tray system. The question I had to parse that is that in total across all schools, or was there on a per school basis, if you sort of average it out, how did they compare?
Yeah, I average it out kind of throughout all the schools, and so the cost would be a little bit more than the throwaway trays, but it's like I said, it's kind of your startup costs to do it, because I think you're buying some trays here and there in the years after that, or as you switch to getting dish machines, and that's going to be the goal. I forgot to mention too that we're building a central kitchen, and my big plan will be to use that central kitchen to have trays at schools that will never have dishwashers and kind of recycle them out. There's a school district in California just south of San Francisco that's doing that, and so I'm going to try to pilot that next year when we get in a new facility.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Excellent. Let's come back to some questions that were thrown out for others. Mari had a question: is anyone able to speak to savings on trash pickup fees at the school, or transfer as an offset against the increased cost for organics compost? And this could be pretty universal, but I'm curious if anybody has a handle on solid waste fees and how those factor in.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit from ours. So when we did, we found there's two issues. Number one is, yes, reducing the waste can help offset the cost of the organics program. Not entirely, because when you factor in things like on our side, we had to factor in bags, or like you said, infrastructure for bins, but generally, it did a pretty good job of offsetting it. But what was happening, and probably at every school, is that they're emptying bins that aren't full, the dumpsters. And so we have what the county is able to do is we have a contract with TELUS that does some sensors on some of the waste bins, so we can tell whether or not the bin is actually full when it's being emptied. So we're helping the schools be able to actually right size their bins, because the haulers always say they'll help in right sizing, but they don't. So the fees, once we pulled out the recycling, pulled out all the organics at the same time, it did offset it, and we right sized the bin. So I think just like having that overall knowledge of what you're actually doing in your school helped with that cost. So you may want to look at that if you're looking at cost-wise.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Erin. Sammy or Rob, do either of you have anything you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, our goal is to reduce the size of the dumpsters that the schools have at their school, but I don't know if that always happens. We do provide the carts, usually 5 carts per school, but they they pay a flat fee for all of those carts, and then after that, it's free. So they can add up to however many food waste carts that they want, for no additional cost. But I like Aaron's idea with, or work with their hauler or contractor to get some more info on how full those dumpsters are. We have ideas of how full our food waste carts are, but our goal would be to reduce dumpster size so that they could reduce the cost of hauling, and kind of offsets that cost with adding on organics service to the school. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't have any info on that.
I think to Sammy's point, the other thing that we learned from our last contract to our new contract, when we actually changed haulers, was we used to pay the same way, is that you had this many carts. It didn't matter how many carts you had at the facility, so it really encouraged organic waste diversion, and then we could reduce the size of the waste dumpster or the number of tips it had. However, when we switched to a new hauler and had a new contract, they didn't write their RFP like that, and that's not how it went. So now we have to pay more, and for every single cart. So it did really complicate things. So if you have that contract now, keep it for as long as humanly possible. And then if you have to go to a new one, find a way to try to keep that way as well. Otherwise, it does complicate things a little bit.
Yeah, love that.
That's a definite pro tip. The contract is what regulates that, and oftentimes, from my experience, I've worked more on the university side, but oftentimes contracts are kind of just, they sleepwalk, and it's the same thing that's been in place for years and years and years. But that precise language can have a real impact, and being involved to the extent that you can get engaged with procurement and all when that's happening, and find some of the best practice language, can really make a difference. Yeah, that could be crucial. So on the spirit of contracts, one of the other questions came in that a number of folks also kind of gave a me too to shifting over to janitor custodial contracts, and specifically working with union contracts and getting the argument that, well, our contract says we handle garbage, we don't handle other things, so it's not our responsibility. This is kind of like a best of old oldie but goodie that I can remember going back 30 years ago when I was working on the university site. But curious if any of you have a response to that, either how you've addressed that or any workarounds to suggest.
Yeah, I can just take a whack at that. We had actually, when we started this a few years ago, the custodians did raise that as a grievance, that now that there was another bin. And so, and it was great that the district was supporting the effort in terms of the contract doesn't state how many bins or how you sort it. It's trash at the end of the day. And so whether it's all together in one basket, one bin, or it's in separate bins, there's really no change to the work. It's actually easier, I think, and it's less because you're sorting cardboard. In the kitchen, we sort cardboard, we sort tin cans, and now we're just sorting food waste that someone else is actually picking up. They don't even actually have to pick those barrels up and put them into anything. It just wheels out. So, I made the argument that it's less work, but if they would like to have more work, I could probably find more things for them to do. That's within the contract.
You just want to be helpful.
Exactly. You just have to have your information together as to what the question is, or what the fight is in terms of that. And but that's interesting too about the other point about where districts in K-12, direct versus indirect costs, what we pay for services in the school. In our district, I don't pay for like electrical or garbage disposal, but where I'm paying for some of the recycling efforts, that might be, I can have a conversation with the business manager about would the district eventually pick up that cost in the budget, because it's we're doing something to help the environment, but it's not truly related to serving students. It's more related to, I think, the environment stuff. But we'll see. For now, I'll ride that boat for now and see how it goes.
Yeah. Sammy or Aaron, either you want to have anything to add on the union side?
Yeah, we haven't had too many issues with the union, at least not that I know of. I mean, there's always those initial concerns, like with Rob saying, of it being extra work, or it's still all the same kind of waste. Like the waste is generated in the school, so it's just being separated out differently. But if we do have issues, I try to go up to the district staff. We work with facilities and maintenance a lot, and so talking with them, we did have issues a few years ago, especially during COVID, with our sort tables were really prominent in one of our school districts, but they were trying to get them out of there because of I don't know if I think staffing issues were the main reason, but we actually had students write letters to the district to keep them in the school. So, yeah, just kind of navigating around all that. Having the students write letters to the district is always helpful, and then yeah, getting relationships started up at the district level to kind of ease some of those concerns. And once the custodians kind of hear from their upper level supervisors, they kind of understand a little better and honestly can't say no, right? They have to listen to their manager. So yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's very much like they will not do anything that isn't specific in their contract. And the contracts are very, very specific. Waste, recycling, organics, bottles, like everything is very detailed and lined out. And so it's helpful that we go to a procurement with the school divisions, because we can help them manage what is in their other, like the custodial contract. They have their own contract for buying bags and cleaning supplies as well. So they have a whole bunch of different contracts that all basically have to mesh together. But if they don't know what the ask is from the programming side of things, they won't know what to put into those other contracts. So they're being involved in our major contract helps a lot, being able to figure out what to, and so they can put it in their contract too, but not actually need it. So like our public schools, it's in their contract that they have an organics rate for that, but none of the schools do it. They have in their custodian, it's that the custodians will empty organics, but they actually haven't enacted that part of their contract. So to put it in is no big deal, but then acting on it is another thing.
Yeah. Good. We're at our official time. I did have a couple more questions specific to share tables before we wrap up. We had one from Kristen. How do you deal with just concerns about allergies, contamination? In her situation, she cited that the nurses would not allow because of concerns. Has anyone faced that?
Yeah, I'll jump in if that's okay with you guys. Yeah, so shared tables are, we have them in most all the schools. It just depends on how the setup is. We work really closely with the nursing department. We work really closely with the health department to make sure that everything's in compliant. We use non-perishable items. Someone doesn't put a milk on the table and then 2 hours later think they're going to take it home. So, we do a lot of that, and it works out very well. And the students in our district, there's a severe need for food, and there's a hunger problem. So, the district kind of welcomes that, and we don't get a lot of pushback, and we just manage, the students that have allergies and so forth. Not everyone's allowed to just go up and have at it at the share table. So it's got to be a control thing. So yeah, I think someone was asking a question about the health boards, health departments in terms of bulk milk too. Yeah, you just work with them, show them what you're doing, and get what their input is. And then I haven't had any issues with that at all in terms of that. And I think there was a follow-up question about the Department of Education and using shared tables. So it's my understanding that once the student receives the meal, when they leave the area after it's been counted, it's theirs to do what they want. I don't go running out into the cafeteria and say, you can't give that apple to this person, or, this person's eating your sandwich, or you threw the milk away. So, right. So, but you can check with your Department of Education just to let them know what you're doing and get their take on it. But my belief is once it leaves the area after you've counted the meal, they can do what they want with it.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. So like I said, we're within the public health department, so that kind of helps us with some of this share table work, especially. So we work with our school health and safety team, and they provided guidelines for us and for our schools to follow. And then, yeah, we did have concerns about allergies earlier this year with one of our schools, but we just worked closely with nutrition services for that district and kind of got some more language to provide with them to kind of ease some of those concerns. And then I was going to say something else. Something Rob said, but yeah, we love share tables. We have added language to our share table signs, and we worked with Vancouver School District on these to say that this food is being donated by this student. Like we had to follow that because of our Department of Ed for Washington State. So that was a requirement, and from there we were good to go. So we didn't have to worry about like any issues with the meals counting or not being counted towards reimbursement. So yeah.
Got it. Great. Good. I think we'll go ahead and cut it off there just because I want to respect everybody's time. But thank you, all three of you. Great presentations, great work that each of you are doing in your local areas. And this is sharing these best practices and lessons learned is how we advance our programs. And it's exciting seeing over time how we're making real progress on certainly on the food issues and having seen the trend 25 years ago, getting rid of the dish rooms and shifting to single-use disposables. It's exciting to see examples of bringing those back in, and so my hat off to each one of you. Let me just bring my slides again. I want to just go over a couple closing items quick. First is that we're going to be taking a break with these webinars for the summer, working on some other projects, but we'll be coming back in August. As you can see up here, we're going to try a different angle. We're going to focus on veterinary facilities. We're going to be bringing in some folks who work with local practices and consultants, talking about examples of how they've done waste prevention and waste reduction programs for veterinary facilities. So we'll be taking a little bit more of a niche perspective with that. And obviously we'll be sending out details about that as we get closer. As we've mentioned previously, the recording and presentation slides, as well as the resources that Tyler's been putting into the chat, and some of the chat logs, some of the things that people have been sharing in the chat log, we'll have all that posted onto our website within the next day or two. And anybody who's registered should be getting that email once those are available. I also want to just point out that we have done 2 other programs that had a specific K-12 focus. And we've same thing. We've got those slides and recordings are all available to find on our website. You can see here some of the case studies that we featured on those past programs. So lots of great resources, lots of great knowledge that's out there in general with K-12 space. So encourage folks to check those out. And in general, we have, at this point, we have about 3 years worth of webinar recordings for a whole range of topics. Then you can find the slides and recordings for, including some of our reuse and waste prevention programs. We did a great program a few months ago on rebuilding confidence and recycling, that you can find that recording on our website as well. So I encourage folks to check that out. And then finally, if you are participating in this and you are with this program and you also participate with some type of waste or sustainability certification program, we don't know who that will apply to and who will accept this program as part of their certification. But if that's one that you are doing and are interested, we can provide you with a certificate of attendance. I know greeneducation.us is one example where that's the case. So just reach out to my colleague, Tyler Bailey, and we can give you something that you can submit for that. And then finally, we'd love to get your feedback. Once this closes down, you close your browser, you should get a pop-up notice of, I think we have a 3 or 4 question quick survey. We'd love to be able to get your feedback. We'll share it with our speakers and just to help us how we can improve the program going forward. So with that, again, thanks, Aaron, Rob, Sammy, great presentations. Good luck with your programs going forward, and look forward to hearing how things go in the future. And everybody have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Alec. Great job putting this together.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Great. Thanks, everybody.